Welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of The Mindful CEO. I'm your co-host, Chris Angel, with your other co-host, Aaron, as we so determined last time, Aaron Hendon.
Exactly. Yes.
I'll let you take it from there, Aaron.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah, well, I asked to introduce Eric because he's a personal friend, someone I really do I admire greatly. I was saying I'm both proud of him given our relationship, and then really honored that Eric would take the time to be here. This is Dr. Eric Holsapple. He's, the author of Profit with Presence and the 12 Pillars of Mindful Leadership. And we thought it was just a natural. Eric sent me his book in preview to read and to comment on when he was finalizing it. And we've known each other. What do you think, Eric? 15 years?
15, 17 years. Yeah. Yes, I wanted to get an endorsement from the sage Aaron.
Yeah.
So thank you. For
that. And it was just, just a real a privilege to be listened to that way. And then I got a copy of the whole book, and it's right up our alley. And Eric is, you still in real estate?
I am, I'm not as active in it as I was, mostly in investments now. I was, for years I was a developer is what I was primarily was, and that's not a old man's game. So I'm not doing as much of that as I was at one time.
Very good. Well, why don't you just take a minute? So Eric and I have known each other for 17 years. And just a delight from Loveland, Colorado. Eric, why don't you just take a little bit and give us a little bit of background so that the listeners get a sense of who you are, where you are, and what you're up to.
Yeah, I would just say, how did I come to think that mindfulness and business, could mix? I mean, so many think it's like oil and water, but I came out with an MBA from Colorado State in the mid 80s, and I was immediately successful in real estate. A few years later, I ran the North American division of an Australian firm, moved to Los Angeles, ran offices in Denver, Princeton, New Jersey, and Western Canada. I reported to the UK and Australia. It was a walk-in boarding pass. And I had all the outward trappings of, boy, this guy's successful, six-figure salary, Mercedes, the apartment, title, all those things. But inside, I was dying, man. I was single. I drank too much. I was overweight. I got a transfer to Boston. They had a New York Stock Exchange company in Boston called Bay Financial. And the good news was there was enough problems in town. I didn't have to travel. So I got an apartment there. My mom, from Maine originally, my mom came down and helped me off it. And I went out and bought a scale because where I was hanging out, they didn't have scales. I knew I couldn't get my tie done and my belt, I couldn't, but I wasn't giving up, I wasn't going, no, I'll get this. But I stepped on that scale, I'll never forget. And I looked in the mirror and said, geez, you're heavy, man. You got to make some changes or you're not going to be around very long. And I did. I made some change from there. I left that job. I lost some weight. I was always an athlete. I started running again, and I stumbled on yoga. I don't know how. I stumbled on it, and it was just profound to me. It was like I'd become disembodied from my body. It was like Ken Robinson says, your body is to carry your head around from meeting to meeting. And I'd just been like 5 years of a blob, and it got me back into it. And then my older brother, he's a poet. My dad was a football coach. They were oil and water. They were estranged. And I watched my older brother took up meditation and just came back to the family. And then he got back to my dad. My dad's in 70. He didn't change, but I just got my family back. And I watched one person change, and it changed the whole world. And he said, you want to try it? And I said, sure, I'll try that. I'd like to try that. I tried it, and it was a game changer for me. It just immediately reduced my stress, gave me clarity, more focus, relationships better. It just hit me. But for years I didn't come out, I was a closet meditator. I didn't talk about it. Yoga and it was, you think it's, there weren't yoga studios. Meditation wasn't the craze that it is today. It was a real minority sport. So I did that for years, and I went back. I said, I'm looking for purpose. I went back and got a PhD. I started teaching, but I morphed back into business because I love real estate and I love to make money. I love capitalism too, but I taught for 20 years at the university part-time. But one by one, people in my real estate business, I started my own real estate business. One by one, people just started noticing changes in me. and what are you doing, and they'd have problems. I became somebody you could talk to versus someone that was just, I still run 150 miles an hour, but I'd slow down enough to have a conversation and say, hey, this is what I'm trying. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try this workshop? Why don't you, do this? And then we started a seed group, little monthly meeting. There was just a couple of us. We'd read a book and we call it centering, not meditation, not to get too weird. And then, before I knew it, the room was full. We brought in a mindful-based stress reduction 8-week program for the whole company. Management team got together. I facilitated. I didn't lead. I didn't participate, but I led. And they came up with mindfully creating community as the LC real estate group vision statement. And that was a game changer. Like, gave everybody permission to focus on nonprofits, put your family first, make a difference in the community. And everybody did better. It wasn't like so many people I hear, like the mindfulness community is money's dirty. The business community is mindfulness is woo woo. Not everybody, but there's a current
That's
there.
the zeitgeist for sure.
And my experience was different than that. And it's my experience, and that's what I'm trying to share through this book, is that I have found that you get more focused, more present, and that you meet people on a more deep, meaningful level, and business happens, and it's been a great ride, and I'm proud and privileged to be here to share it with you today.
Eric, that's so great. I love it's such a natural flow, and I don't know if this is I don't know if I have a question about this. Certainly this is a statement, but I'm wondering, probably a question after I get it out. It seems really weird to me that mindfulness and business would be disconnected in some way, that there would be some kind of pushback. I mean, I know that there is. I experience it too. And we did a whole episode on coming out of the closet as woo-woo. We were like, how much of the law of attraction can we talk about before we get banished to the land of, essential oils and like that. And certainly meditation has that flavor to it. But I guess what I'm interested in, as you rolled out a meditation, mindfulness practice, stress reduction for your business.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of pushback? First of all, do you run programs in organizations now? Does Living in the Gap?
I do.
You do.
I do. So, I run 8-week programs. Yeah.
So talk to me about the nature of those 8-week programs and the pushback you get, or the interest in it. Has it been great? Talk to me about those.
It's been great. We run it as kind of an introduction. We run a longer 9-month program, and it's been kind of an introduction to that. But a lot of people have the 8 weeks, and that's all they want or all they need. And it's, the hard part is, you hear habits about 21 days and those kind of things. But I find that mindfulness is a countercultural habit. It isn't in the mainstream yet. Right. I mean, it's growing, and you don't have the support system and whatnot. So, I find it takes quite a while to turn. I recommend people a year, to figure that it's going to stick and how much you can do it. But it's been great. People notice an immediate change with a change of mindset and we go a little slower than most. Like, I start people with 2 minutes of meditation, not, 40,
right.
Because I think the mind's so busy when you start that it can be counterproductive. I don't know how many people have said, I can't meditate. It's crazy up there. Well, it's always been crazy. It's always been crazy. You just haven't noticed because you've been so enmeshed in it.
Yeah.
So we start people pretty slow, with some gratitude and 2 meditation. And I have found, and it isn't for everybody, I have found that body movement, it was just a key for me because I'm active. I'm an athlete, and I bounce all over the place. I'm high energy. So yoga. But now I've backed off saying, we say, well, do mindful weightlifting and do mindful Pilates, do mindful, whatever you do, mindful running. You don't have to be yoga, but somehow experience being in your body, versus being in your head. And that is just, if you can give somebody that experience, that's where that peace and joy and happiness start to, come into their life. So it's been phenomenal. The 8-week is a great period of time. Most people can make time for it. The 9-month program we run, that there's a lot of resistance that comes up for that for people. But the ones that go through it get a ton out of it because they actually are on the path to having, mastery in a habit.
And now I'm just going to get in the weeds with it because I'm interested. The 8-week program is you go in once a week, you go in twice a week.
Usually once a week. We've run it both in person and we've run, half in person, half Zoom, just for, convenience sake. And they practice in between. The idea is to be consistent, do something at just 10 or 15 minutes a day to do consistency. I found is more important than length of time.
Totally.
If you can do it daily, and if not daily, regularly, to get into it, can just make a huge difference. And it's also nice thing about the 8-week too is, it's with other people, and that can just, when you're just hearing what other people are getting, and it's in a professional work context, but it's always like, my kids are, really happy that I'm doing this.
That begins to change the whole dynamic because you're no longer in an environment by yourself. And that's the thing, that's sort of a problem that we have around getting people through the door of meditation, is they think they have to do it alone, or that if they are doing it, because you are doing it alone, but if you are doing it alone, that there won't be any community supporting it, but doing it, running it as a business thing.
What's the format,
we
Eric?
Just had I'll get that in one second. We just had a meeting here this morning. We had a partnership quarterly meeting on all this. We always start them with a centering. Yeah. Just a quick, 5-minute, everybody ground and just get here, get off your phone and arrive, get here. Format is usually a book. One of the books that we love to use. Now this spring, I'm going to use my book, but another book we love to use is by Sean Archer called The Happiness Advantage. Just a phenomenal, simple book that just, highlights that, happiness, success circles around happiness, not the other way around, be happy first. And so it's a simple little book. We just read a little bit, 5 or 6 pages a day kind of thing to get the mind going. Gratitude's always the lowest hanging fruit. I find easier to start and hang on to than meditation. It's not as scary and it's like immediate. So some gratitude, some journaling, hopefully some movement. I find movement, and it can be just a mindful walk, but some sort of movement. We use yoga to actually show, because yoga, in my view, is a science of consciousness. We use yoga to show this is why yoga is not, doesn't matter. You can stand on your head. Can you feel your body? And you just feel where it is. And then we go, and then every other or every third session, we go a little bit deeper and introduce a few other things like deep listening or active listening. We love to have people pair up and go have talks and not allowed to talk about business. We do that in the first 2 months of our longer program. No business talk. You're not allowed to share what your career is. You want to bring who you are to what you do, not what you do to who you are. I'm vice president of this, or I'm the janitor. You're either better than or worse than the person you're talking to, rather than just equal in essence. So we try to keep away from the careers, and it just opens up getting to know somebody versus, just what they do.
And in those weekly sessions, how long are the sessions?
Anywhere from a half hour to 2 hours, depending on where the content is. If we go on Zoom, we're usually doing a half-hour content and a half-hour sharing. And then when we get together, it's usually a couple hours.
Nice.
Of it. You do a yoga, and then you introduce some topic, and then sharing is important. Have people share what they're experiencing and what they're not experiencing.
Right. Yeah, there's got to be a lot of people that I would suspect a lot of people think they're not getting it.
Yeah.
Like they expect that there to be something to get.
Well, one of the things that we try to do is have someone actually experience presence, being in the zone or whatever that is. And then, because my experience is the practice is once you get that feeling is notice when you're not. Right. And then try to come back again. Notice when you're not. But if you haven't had that experience or not sure you have that experience, sometimes it's the intellectual part of, oh, I got it. Mindfulness. Yeah, I got it. Versus no. This is like, I'm actually with another person right now. I'm actually being intimate with another person right now. And getting that feeling is huge. Yeah. And you just want more of it.
I always find it funny I guess, that how much after I've pressed through my resistance to getting present, how enjoyable it is on the other side, how much resistance I have to, especially, like I'm, if I'm going to go spend some time to connect with my wife. And we have been fairly rigorous. We did a tantric workshop, which is consistent with all the principles. The pillars of tantra are the same as the pillars of mindfulness. It's completely parallel. And, we spending an hour and a half or 2 hours together, like minimum a week, like just nothing else to do. Maybe we'll do some qigong, maybe we'll do some meditation, maybe we'll do some massage, but like it takes that, there's that barrier there to getting present, to just getting through it, to being able to, and then how easy it is once I'm through it. But I'm always amazed at the resistance. I never have the experience of, I can't wait to get, although every time I'm done with it, I'm left with the experience of, oh gosh, thank God I did that. You know what I mean? Like that experience.
Oh, no, the resistance is, we're just drawn to distraction.
Yeah.
Because of I think it's our lack of familiarity with being present. Just that our society and our culture has driven us the other direction. It hasn't been something that's been taught, encouraged, or rewarded. And so I think it's novel to people. And if you're not comfortable in something that's novel, it's like you don't trust it. And I find also, particularly for really smart people that have always thought themselves out of things, it's really hard for them to just give it up and say, no, I'm just a being, I'm just going to feel my way through this. Trust my instincts,
Yeah.
So no, I think that's more common than less common, Aaron, that it's people have that. For me, I've been doing it long enough that, I crave that more. My primary sessions in the morning, I crave it, to go in and have that and to start my day with that, because, and then I can draw into it later in the day. But I catch myself on this stupid thing, drawn in, and it's, we're driven to distraction, food, whatever it is, we eat to distract ourselves. But once you start noticing that, then you just got to start and say, there's only way to claim your focus is to declare it. And no one else, business is so great at getting our attention, right? From social media to media to whatever it is, we're just so great at grabbing attention and having them see our listing and having them find this and, finding all these ways. And the only hope, it's not going to get better, it's going to get worse. AI and everything. The only hope we have is for us to declare it and pay attention and say, no, my attention is mine. I'm going to place it where I want to, and I'm going to notice when I'm not there and bring it back. And what we try to do is say, can I focus that at work when I'm there? And then can I go home and turn that off and focus on my family? Right. So they're taken care of. So the next day at work, I can actually focus on work because I haven't, just ignored my family. I've paid attention to them, and I'm okay taking some time out. And because focus at work is just like so productive compared to our normal state of, 5 screens open and the phone ringing. And, if you can focus, man, I think you can move the world in a couple hours a day.
Yeah.
I suspect you're sort of touching on it, but I'm curious, you have a sign behind you that says living in the gap.
Yeah.
I think your domain is the same. I'm assuming that's sort of what the gap is, and maybe you can draw that out for us. Like, what is the gap between here and where?
There's a lot of gaps. The primary one that we focus on is just a little gap between thoughts, when one thought stops, another one starts, and a little gap between, we start to notice thoughts rather than being just caught up on them. That's who we are. I like baseball analogy. I just want to get so I can just, don't swing at balls for my thoughts. I can just let those go and wait till I get a strike. But I notice that I'm the one who notices the thoughts. Some 6,000 thoughts a day, and mine aren't all that productive. Most of them are repetitive. I have, a couple good ones, maybe a week, but most of them are not helpful.
Yeah.
So just gap, a little bit of a separation there. There's also gaps of, where I am and where I want to go. And I find if I can get really aware of myself, of where I am, and I can get a real vision, we use visioning, or where I want to go, that line fills itself in pretty well. We but we don't tend to be really honest with ourselves on where we are, and we don't spend time thinking, what do I really want? Not what society has told us, it's all about making stuff and consuming stuff. It's all about, gross domestic product and, how much you can consume and how much you can produce. And there's nothing, I'm an economist, there's nothing wrong with it. It's fine, but it's not happiness and it's not purpose. So we spend some time saying, okay, what do you really want? And 9 times out of 10, it's better relationships. I just want to really connect with my wife and my kids and my business partners. I just want to make a real connection, not a superficial one. I really want to be there, for them genuinely. I want my kids to know that I'm there. I want to have a true friendship with them. And, all the kids usually want is for you to be present with them. They don't care if you're Superman or, the fire chief or whatever. They just want, could you spend 5 minutes with me? Please. So I don't know. I kind of rambled there a little bit.
No, that's
good.
I love that thing. There's the gap. When I lead mindfulness, I lead a mindfulness gratitude meditation every morning, and noticing the gap in the breath, and it's those it's those gaps that give us an opportunity. And that see, the thing you said, it really is so, I think, useful for people, and it's the heart of mindfulness. But we really are so judgmental by default that the opportunity to bring non-judgmental awareness to where we are, it's very much, in line with our, our training about, this is just what Werner used to say is, when you get what's so, you get so what. And it's, very much in that domain. It's just, that's what's so. This is where I am. And we have such resistance to, and I think it's tied up in the judgment about it.
Well, when we're judging, right, we're not present.
Right.
We're just reducing everything to a label. And it's that stress and anxiety reside in what we think, not what actually happens to us. It's what we think about it. So if we can get in that way of being, or in a gap, or in the zone, or whatever, whatever the term is that resonates with you, then you can start being present. And then from there, if you can get there, you can say, I can handle anything. I'm going to handle death one day. What could be bigger than that? We're all going to handle it. I can handle things from that bigger container versus, oh my God, the biggest judgment we have is on ourselves usually,
Almost always. I think that's a lot of the resistance.
Yeah.
What's I'm always curious, especially in this mindfulness conversation, with those we have on as guests, like how you see the connection between profits and presence. I mean, that's the title of your book, right? Profits and presence.
Well, profit's necessary. I mean, you're not going to be first of all, like in a concept of the mindful CEO, you're not going to be CEO for long if you're not making a profit. I mean, it's just not going to happen. Right. I mean, and it's what makes the world go around. It's what makes us, affluence increases influence. We have to make a profit to stay in business. But I just find, it's got to be okay to make money in capitalism. It can't be like that's dirty and it's not okay and whatnot. So, but what I think is missing from capitalism is consciousness. The capitalism can't work if it's just the top 1% that figures everything out and they end up with all the marbles. It's not going to last long term. It's got to be that those that can give back. Of course you take care of yourself and your family first and your needs, but being somewhat realistic of what those needs are, and then being willing to reach out and bring some others along, and to help out where we can, and working with nonprofits and those things, which is also a hugely impactful positive with business. You get to meet people when you're on nonprofits. You get to meet people at a whole nother level than you do at a closing. You get to see what somebody's soul is. What are they really about? So I just think there's so much. So profit with presence means, yes, we have to make profits, but you can be present. You can make a difference. You can do it all. You can make money and make a difference, and be happy first. Who's going to want to get the call? The guy that's, Aaron, you're in real estate. Who's the happy broker that makes the guy feel good, or the grinder that, all the time is just, grinding, nothing ask you a question about yourself, just always, I just think we call people to make us feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, it makes sense to be happy.
You've talked about it a couple of times. You mentioned it a couple of times, but just talk to me about your relationship or what you see as the significance of purpose.
Ooh, I think it's motivation. I mean, people say I can't get motivated, or I can't get my team motivated. And it really hit me. I taught 20 years at university, mostly seniors, and I'd have them come in, getting grades and whatnot. Why are you here? And they go, well, mom and dad said if I get in business or engineering, they pay for it. What's next? Well, I don't know. I guess. So let me tell you what's next. Job, wife, mortgage. You're going to wake up and you're going to be 50. Spend a little bit of time trying to figure out why you're here, what you're about, what you want to do. And it's okay to tell mom and dad that they got you here. Thanks, but I'm going to take a different route. That's not what I want to do. You got to. Purpose is, a couple levers, and I got this from Eckhart Tolle. Inner purpose, really waking up and realizing I'm a human. I'm consciousness. I'm not just this body. I'm an energy source. I'm more than this. I'm bigger than this body. And then outer purpose, what I do, and can I find what I'm really good at and what I'm passionate at, and do that, and where it turns my heart, because I find leaders born from purpose. You'll find people, when they find something that really drives them, stepping up into the vortex, stepping up in the vacuum. You would never dream of it. I'm not a believer that there's just this class of leaders and put in any circumstance and they're just gonna, march you down the field. I think leaders are born of purpose when you, and that's how you just pop out of bed in the morning versus, get dragged out. Find something that inspires you and find a way to get paid for it, but purpose is motivation to me. Is why you do it. And then, profit comes from a purpose-driven life. You meet a demand and profit comes from that. But by itself, God, I just find that you get the profit and you just look for more and more and more and different and bigger houses and whatnot, and you never really get there with satisfaction and happiness.
And is that what you mean by misguided purpose, like societal driven purpose? Societal
driven, yeah. So many things we found that I don't even think it's a valid purpose, but we've adopted it, just to have the title, just to have the money, just to have the house. We're not our house, we're not our title, we're not our money, and none of those things are bad. They're all good, but if we try to find our purpose and our happiness in them, my experience is overwhelming that with a lot of successful friends and myself is once we reach our targets, we want more. Once we hit the 6 figures, we want 2-3 times that. Once we hit the house, it's got to be the house on the golf course, the bigger house. We get a country club. Well, I need another one in the mountains. I need a condo. And I say, first I wanted to travel and I flew, then I wanted to fly first. And then I said, if I could just fly private. And now it's if I could just go to the moon, we just keep moving the goalposts.
Yeah.
And that happiness stick is just still out there. So I just say, you got to get that right first. Don't waste your time. I did. I wasted, and it paid off in some ways. I learned a ton about business in that time, but I really wasted the prime of my life just running around for money.
Reminds me of, I was just talking this morning with my wife about Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil. And in that book, talking about 98% of people being in a hypnotic rhythm, there's just so much of a rhythm to that public purpose, that the purpose they tell you to have. So you go, oh, now I'm stuck in the hamster wheel of the house, then the condo, then going to the moon. Like there's just a treadmill we get stuck on.
I haven't read that one, but yeah. And it's like, we haven't designed a time where we get to look at that stuff. Right. Some people take a gap year or do something like that, which is a great time for that. some of us just have, multiple midlife crises. I've had about 10 of them, where you just say, hey, I got to look at this. I got to look at this, I got to keep looking at this and figure it out for me. And, sometime you get it, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure out what makes me tick, and for me, I'm lucky I got to do that and make money. And I think most business people can, most business people, good business people, are going to make money, but can they do it in a way? And I'm not saying, and we all know people that made money and they're miserable. They're just good at it. Or people that are really happy without anything. So, I mean, either is possible, but I think you can do both. You could be happy, making a difference for people, and, affluence, and your affluence will increase your influence. You can make a bigger difference.
You said that thing about, well, first of all, Outwitting the Devil, you will love, Eric.
Yeah, I haven't read that one.
Okay, it was released way after his death.
Think and Grow Rich, but I haven't read that one.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. We all read Think and Grow Rich multiple times, but Outwitting the Devil was released
not that long ago.
Not that long ago. He said, "Don't release this for 100 years," or whatever he said when he died.
I'll order it.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I listened to it, and it's like it's an interview he has with the devil, and the devil distinguishes all the ways he has trapped mankind. So
I love it already.
He thought it'd be way too controversial to release at the time of the writing, which was probably right. They would probably have vilified him. But you said that thing about we always want more, and there, I'm interested in your take on this, because I'm also a big proponent of the law of attraction, and Joe Dispenza and Abraham Hicks is a favorite of mine. And my relationship to wanting more was very much given by our, that whole world that, that we're in for transformation. I still lead programs, by the way, Eric. So it's not something that's behind me in any way. But that whole, happiness is where you come from, right? Which is clearly what you're saying. And I 100%, that's 100% what I would argue for, is that happiness is not a place you get to, it's a place you come from. But that world had left me somehow invalidating that I always wanted more. Like, I shouldn't want more because I should be happy now. I think it's a sort of a slippery slope down that hill versus, and Esther Hicks completely transformed this for me when I heard it, which was, you're always going to want more.
Yeah.
That's not the problem. The problem's not that you want more. Of course you want more, because you can manifest anything. So why wouldn't you want the next thing when you get the thing you want? Why wouldn't you want the next thing? And it really is, can you experience in the present moment the deep satisfaction? There's a Jewish principle of Dayenu. It's not really a principle, but it's something we say, which is fundamentally, which means really it would have been enough. But it really represents for me that world of what Joe Dispenza points to as gratitude as the ultimate point of attraction, that I'm deeply satisfied with the way things are and I'm eager for more.
Great.
And I think it's that I always, when people talk about wanting more, I always hear it like, I want to make sure it doesn't get heard like an invalidation of wanting more. Like, it's not that you're, be happy now and want more. Can you do both? And
realizing that if you're not happy now,
yes,
chances are with more is not going to do it. I mean,
100%.
Science, most of the science was, over 80, and with inflation, it's probably 100,000. Over that kind of income, you don't get happy. You just get more stuff.
Yes.
So some kind of realization that, and I had a big thing I'm a golfer. If I go to the golf course and try to find my happiness out there, I come home and kick the dog 3/4 of the time. But if I can bring happiness to the golf course or bring happiness to my vacation versus going to there and looking for it, then life just really gets fun, Yeah. And you get there and you're not like, I have to do this list of things. No, I'm already happy. What are we going to do? What's this? Oh, a ball went out of bounds. Oh, well, let's drop another one. it can just be different.
Yeah, very good. I think that's key. Can you, and this all wraps up inside, the opportunity to invent the possibility and inventing a future for yourself
Absolutely.
that matters. It's different ways to get, there's so many different ways to get there. You just have to be committed that there's a there's a, that this right now, what works and doesn't work, what gives me power and what doesn't give me power about this. And the thing you pointed to, I love the last blog post, is what I'm going off of, is the egotistical and societal influences of purpose. Do those give me power? When you're interviewing those seniors, are you going to be filled with power, joy, and freedom when you leave here and you get that job?
And they still haven't found anybody in their deathbed that said, I wish I worked more.
Right.
Yep. But do I wish I loved more? Do I wish I, had more joy? Yeah, that's almost universal.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to use that as a guide. Like, okay, am I ever going to say, I wish I attended too many of my kids' softball games? Yeah. No, I will never say that. That would never be a thing for me. I highly regret all those times I spent, just me and my wife hanging out. Never going to say that,
Right. Figure out how to, make money too. And there you go.
And that really is, that's the purpose of Profit with Presence. I love it. And we're going to, just so Eric, and, anyone who's listening can know that your 12 pillars of power.
Pillars.
There you go. 12 pillars of mindful leadership are, built-in riffs for us to explore. So we may be emailing you questions and stuff.
Great. I'm up for it.
Feels like a place to wrap this. If people want to get to you, so it's livinginthegap.com.
Livinginthegap.org. It's a nonprofit. Living in the Gap spelled out .org. Yeah, and there's free resources on there if you want to have a dive in, or there's a list of books and practices, those kind of things, or if you want to learn about our programs, you can get the book there, and it's also on Amazon.
And your newsletter is great.
Oh, good, great.
That was.
Yeah, you can sign up for that.
I have the hiccups. All of a sudden, I have the hiccups, which is what's happening now.
Life.
What my body is saying now. Great. Eric, anything else you just want to leave us with before we go?
I would just say, if you have an interest in it, start small and be consistent. You don't have to, it's the small little practices that are easy to do, easy not to do. Just find a way to do those little practices and knock off a few things that are, sabotaging you, and just get started, get on the path. It doesn't have to be the big shift all in, one day or one weekend. It can be this little tiny shift in intention, and, just take a mindful walk. Leave your phone behind someday. Just take a walk around the building at lunch. Just look up at the trees and just take a few breaths and take a mindful walk to get started. Just reset your day.
Great.
Awesome.
Eric, I really appreciate your time. I love you. I love that we're still connected after all these
years.
Yeah,
me too.
And I love that we're connected in this,
awesome.
all the ways to stay connected in empowering people to live a mindful life is just, I love it. I love that we circled back to this. So
appreciate being on, Aaron, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah. So glad you're here, Eric. Thanks, everybody. If you want to learn more about the Mindful CEO, go to themindfulceo.com and check out the links there. And until next time, see ya.
Thanks.